Network Digital Career Success Series. I am today live from Miami, and our guest speaker, Aerial Ellis, is live from Tennessee to prove to you that you can build your brand and build your network anywhere. We are continuing our spring series today on branding, building your brand in a networked world. We are already connected, but how do you stand out? How do you make yourself different? Aerial Ellis and I met many years ago, both working on a project called 100 Urban Entrepreneurs, 100 UE. So she is a true FOJ and entrepreneur strategist, and now newly author of an ebook called The Original Millennial, of which I consider myself to be. Today, Ariel will take us through what it's going to really take to really become a true brand. You need to stand out in this world. There's thousands of us in the same industry doing most of the same things, knowing a lot of the same people. We joke about the 6 degrees of separation, so how can you be that second or first on someone's shortlist when it's time for a job, a contract, or a change of your career? So today we are bringing on Ms. Ellis, who will take us through what she thinks is the best way to ensure your brand stands out and that you have the most successful career possible. And I just want to thank her in advance for bringing this to us. I know you've been traveling, and you guys are in for a treat. So here we go about personal branding.
Awesome. Thank you, Jody. Thank you for having me. Really excited to share this information with the Jobs Network and all the folks who are listening. I will have to say that the Urban League has been very special to me as a YP in Middle Tennessee, as well as the Memphis chapter in my hometown has been very supportive of my career and my progression. So thank you for having me. So yeah, let's get started. Personal branding is something that a couple years ago someone asked me to speak about, and I said, wonder why she asked me to speak about that. And then I realized, oh, you've been building your personal brand and you've been leveraging social media to be able to do that very well. So, and through a series of different talks, I was able to create a little bit of a presentation and had an opportunity to share this presentation with different groups across the country, and I'm glad to be able to share that with the group today. Building your brand in a networked world is something that we often grapple with. Sometimes we have trouble figuring out what our online voice is, and we have trouble figuring out what to say and how to say it, how frequently to say what we feel like we need to say. And sometimes if we're employed, sometimes we have trouble figuring out if that makes sense in the relationship we have with our employers, and if it makes sense for us as entrepreneurs, how often and how frequently and when should we be saying the things that we say, and how do we use that to better leverage opportunities for our business and our future careers. So let's get started. I want to remind everybody to tweet what you're hearing and share and all that good stuff using the hashtag ULSuccess. You can also, if you're listening or watching through your computer, feel free to send any questions in and answer the polls that come up when they appear. So let's get started. A little bit about me. You'll see here a couple of keywords and buzzwords. Just like you go to Google and maybe search for certain things, I have keywords for myself. And we'll talk a little bit later about what keywords mean for you and how to create those keywords and how to create those buzzwords around who you are. But these are the phrases and the words essentially that I use to describe myself. So if you go to my Twitter page, my Twitter profile, my Instagram profile, Facebook, etc., you'll see that I'll have a little bit of consistency in being repetitive in the ways in which I describe myself with my keywords. It would be great if you all who are listening, if you would tweet, if you see or know some keywords for yourself, feel free to tweet out using the hashtag ULSuccess. Tweet out your keywords that you use to describe yourself. I won't go through all of those. You can see them, but you can also look directly and see I consider myself an original millennial. I'm a young entrepreneur. I'm an adrenaline junkie. I love to get that adrenaline rush. I'm a music connoisseur, a fitness fan, all those kinds of things make my brand, not just professionally, but personally. They make who I am, and I want to reinforce those things in everything that I do. So what is branding? Of course, we've heard of branding a lot. It's a huge buzzword, just like some of the other buzzwords that we use a lot lately in business, but it's really an old trend. Some folks may say that it has kind of a negative connotation, but for the most part, it definitely shows us how to think through the reinforcement of what we think about relevance and how things are really relevant to us. But it has this new fame. Now that we have social media and we have the internet and all these different types of tools, branding has become famous again. Typically, you would see only corporations using branding strategies, and now we have individuals who are using strategies. So we have this new fame versus this old trend, and now it's time for us to be able to really think through what it means for our who we are as individuals and how we use that. So what is a brand? Let's go through the definition real quick. A brand is the sum of interactions, expectations, and experiences that will determine the value of a relationship. Now, I want to clarify, it does not mean that the sum does not lead to a relationship. The sum of those things lead to the value or creating some type of value for a relationship. So it essentially means that the interactions that you have with me or that people have with you, the expectations that people have of you, and the experiences that they have with you, all of that added together determines how valuable they consider the relationship they have with you. So we're in this age of the individual where we're almost looking at ourselves as the CEO of me. And as you think through that, you have to consider what are the interactions that people have with me that create value, what type of expectations do they have of me that create value, and also what type of experiences are they remembering and collecting with me that will create value for an ultimate relationship where they will remember me as a result. Let's look at the elements of a brand real quick too. There are 4 elements of a brand. Position. This is where I'm flipping the definitions back to if we were talking about a corporation. I'll flip back to individual later. The position of a brand. This is the unique value proposition or the unique benefit that a company with its products and services may provide to their target audiences. This is what makes them different than their competitors. So oftentimes we hear companies say, what's your brand position or what's your positioning statement? Often for clients with their communication strategy, I have to write a series of positioning statements. And those positioning statements is essentially prove and kind of lock in, if you will, what a company is and who they say they are. Your brand promise is the second element. This is the most important thing, going back to the definition, this is the most important thing that you promise to deliver every single time someone comes in contact with you. They have the same expectation in every interaction without any type of contradiction or hesitation. They know exactly what they're going to get when they're dealing with you. That's your brand promise. Your brand personality, third. These are your traits. These are the things that kind of make you stand out a little bit differently than others who have some similarities as you or who do the same, work in the same industry as you. What's that personality? What are some of the things that they can describe you by with traits and different characteristics, etc. Just like individuals, of course, you'd have your brand personality. And then lastly, number 4, the 4th element of a brand is your story. Of course, your story is going to be unique, because each individual, each brand, each corporation has their own history, how they started, how they came to be, how they grew to success, what pitfalls they were able to avoid, and then even what were some of the mistakes that they made that ultimately got them to where they are, and they learned from those mistakes. So everybody's story is different. So that's definitely one of the things. If you notice, each item gets a little bit more personal as we go down the list. So the 4th element, a brand story, definitely adds value and credibility. Now let's switch and start talking about the foundation of your brand. We talked about the definition of a brand. We spoke about the 4 elements of a brand. Let's talk about the foundation of your brand. Aligned with those 4 elements, we have 4 questions here. Who are you? What do you do? Why does it matter? What makes you different? Sometimes those questions, they sound very, very simple. But sometimes those questions are hard to answer. Many times I'll ask my clients who may come from corporations, and they sometimes have a hard time answering those questions for the company that they work for. So I'm certain sometimes we have quite a bit of trouble feeling comfortable answering those questions about who we are as individuals. So who are you? Your brand is often going to reflect who you are as a person, etc. Thinking about, what do I stand for? What is my mission? What are the things that are really, really near and dear to me? What are my core values? What can my vision statement look like? These are things that make you who you are. Second question, what do you do? What does your business do? What would be your elevator speech? If you could sum yourself up in 30 seconds, what would you say? You can look at your core competencies. You can look at your things that really are you can highlight as specialties. Thinking about that and trying to sum that up really quickly and answering that question, what do you do, is definitely important to add to the foundation of your brand. Next, why does it matter? This is where it gets a little tricky. This is a tough question because sometimes we have, as individuals, we have this trepidation of explaining to people why we matter. We know we have value, but we're not always able to translate that value in conversation and tell others. So you want to think through, what type of personal contributions do I have that have enough value for someone to think those things are relevant in business and community, in any leadership roles that you have on boards, committees, etc. Why does it matter? Thinking about who I am, what do I do, and then why does it matter specifically helps us be better able to have that level of confidence. And then lastly, what makes you different? This can be aligned with that fourth element of story, which is one of the elements of branding that we just looked at. We're all different, of course, but what makes you different? It's hard to develop a meaningful brand if we're not able to really communicate the different strengths and abilities and different things essentially that we contribute. So at that point, when you can answer what makes me different, that is where you find that competitive advantage in building your personal brand. I hope you all are tweeting. You'll have a question coming up soon, the poll question. Would love to know, for what reasons do you avoid personal branding? Here are a couple reasons that I found, reasons that we avoid personal branding. First of all, we get bogged down by work and life responsibilities. There's so much. I can tell you right now, I have so much on my plate, and I'm so blessed to be able to have these things on my plate. But I do understand that I have to continue to build my personal brand. I can't neglect myself. But a lot of times we have family, we have work, we have so many different things, and we're just trying to get through the day. We don't think about what it means to brand ourselves. Another reason we avoid personal branding is that we are so accustomed to one-way communication instead of two-way communication. Just think about it. We're used to being told what to do as a kid by our parents and sit down and listen, being taught by our teachers. We're accustomed to being in meetings at work and being facilitated to and lectured to, etc. We're used to sitting down in front of the TV and being entertained, or even listening to music. We can't necessarily talk back to that favorite artist that we have that we're listening to on Pandora or Spotify. That one-way communication is what we're accustomed to. Thankfully, with internet and social media, we now have two-way conversations, and we can build through those conversations. So many times we avoid personal branding simply because we're used to being talked to instead of sharing information. Another reason we avoid personal branding is because we simply don't think we have anything inspiring or intriguing to say. I often have to, in several of my talks, I often have to remind the audience that I'm speaking to that your story can always inspire someone. There's always someone who will find something intriguing about your story, or intriguing about your path, or intriguing about the work that you're doing, or inspiring inspiring them in a way where they've not received that kind of inspiration before at a specific time. So often we think, oh, I don't really have anything to say, or I just won't share because I don't have anything important to share. The next thing we do is we assume that we are being disloyal to our organizations. So if I put myself out there as this expert or this authority in healthcare, then my employer, who is a hospital or a healthcare, maybe say an insurance company or something of that nature, I'm not waving their flag when I position my own expertise. So I'm gonna walk away from this personal branding thing because it feels a little disloyal to my organization. That's another reason. Lastly, last reason why we avoid personal branding is because often we don't want to look too preachy. Essentially what we've seen is a lot of people take on personal branding and they're shoving their personal brand down our throat. They're a little they kind of wear your attention span out. And we've seen that. We don't want to really look self-centered. We don't want to look showy, like we're show-off, and so we just avoid it altogether, when essentially there is a middle ground. There's a sweet spot that we can create to where our content is valuable. We just got to get there, and it doesn't mean that we want to avoid personal branding altogether. Do we have the poll questions for? I guess we can go back and look at the answers, but I'd love to be able to see what kind of response we're getting. Oh, that's awesome. 50% of you all are saying that you get too bogged down with work and life, and that's totally understandable. 29%, I figured this, say you don't have anything intriguing to say, and then the next one is I don't want to brag about myself. That's totally understandable. We'll talk about some ways in which you can kind of curtail those things and feel really confident in what you're doing. I mentioned earlier about this shift to personal branding and what that shift has looked like, the shift from corporate branding to personal branding and how those techniques are being used. The reality is organizations are now seeking to understand the ways in which they can benefit from their employees' personal brands. I've seen it time and time again where, and this was of course not always the case, but many organizations are actually valuing the fact that their employers are going out into the community and doing different things and hosting events or sending on boards and communities. Instead of that looking like a threat, it looks like there is a segment of that work population or that employee base who's bringing a certain level of expertise and a certain level of cultural experiences back to the organization. So they're finding value in that. Organizations are also discovering that ROI, that return on investment, by allowing their employees that freedom and flexibility to do their thing. Our organizations are essentially realizing that for Ariel to be able to be on a board or be on a committee and have that monthly board meeting and be a committee chair within this organization, as we give her this freedom and flexibility to be able to do that and explore those professional pursuits, she's also, again, bringing more value back to our organization, because who knows who else is sitting on that board? Who knows what event may come out of that committee that may ultimately enhance her level of knowledge that she can bring to the workplace. Lastly, organizations are recognizing the value of diversity and change that their employee personal brands bring to their overall culture. So again, that rich experience that I may be having out in the community, that rich experience that I may be having through my blog posts and the comments that I get and being looked at as an expert or an authority on something, they realize that, wow, you know, she's keeping up with the things that are happening in our world and in our community and applying her professional knowledge to that, and that's going to bring more diversity to our organization. Let's talk about what personal brand means for senior leaders and professionals. So this is for you all who, don't forget to tweet, hashtag UL Success. Let's start to talk about what it means for those of you who are working full-time, who are leaders within your organizations, who are moving up the corporate ladder. Personal branding allows you to really make sense of who you are. It allows you to see what you're bringing to your organization, your value. It may even get you to a point where you need to renegotiate your salary, right? Or renegotiate your salary package. It gives you an opportunity to really understand what you're bringing to the table within your organization. It also gives you a chance to determine if you're being underutilized within your organization as well. It allows you, secondly, to leverage your own cultural fit in an organization. I've recently been in a situation, and a couple of my colleagues as well, where we kind of feel like, you know, we're high-level contributors, but do we fit within our organizations? Well, we probably do fit, but maybe we need to kind of leverage some things so we fit even better and ultimately impact the culture within the organization and improve the culture within that organization. Many organizations will have that balance between employees making great contributions and then employees who fit really well, right? And that also is kind of a sweet spot that you can reach with personal branding. You also get an opportunity, if you're a senior leader or you're a working professional within an organization, you get an opportunity to inspire and engage others with this distinctive leadership voice and message. So my colleagues at the university where I teach, they know that I'm an expert on something. and not just on something. They know exactly what I'm good at because I've been able to use my voice in a certain capacity around the things that I know that I'm good at, and I've been able to engage them and inspire them. So some of them are now saying, hey, you've been sending me your blog posts for the last year. I've decided I'm going to start a blog as well so that I can feel this level of creativity and this inspiration moving through me as a professional, and I can share that and create that message with my voice. Lastly, you get a chance as a senior leader or a professional within your organization, a working professional, you get a chance to combine that work life and that culture in ways that are very motivational. Many times we leave work at home or work away from home, and we don't bring our work life into the company culture and things of that nature. And what we're finding now is a little bit of that is okay. And it definitely doesn't mean that you're being completely open and transparent about everything, but a little bit of that is beginning to be okay, because organizations are now finding ways, whether it be through employee resource groups, or just different activities outside of work, volunteer opportunities where the team goes to do a project together in the community. They're valuing that more and more. So it means that if I think of myself as a personal brand, I bring a little bit more to the table. I'm able to share. I work with this, I volunteer for this organization, and as a result, I can motivate the rest of my team. When I share that story with them, I can motivate my coworkers or even my boss to do the things that they have a heart for doing, and then also sharing that online so that others can see, hey, I'm not monolithic. I'm not one-dimensional. So those are some key tips for or reasons why um, employees of corporations and organizations, as well as senior leaders, should be branding themselves personally. Next, for entrepreneurs and consultants. So this is right up my alley, right? So I know this very well. Personal branding allows entrepreneurs and independent consultants to build up a business that's extremely unique to who they are. It's an expression of yourself. It can be a little daunting when you decide to step out there as a professional, but it gives you opportunity to stand out in a crowded marketplace when you have the confidence to be able to talk about the things that you do, brand yourself professionally, and personally, when you have to build that business. So you can't really be successful in business if you're not, branding yourself and branding the work that you do. You also get an opportunity as an entrepreneur to translate your vision, your values, and your purpose into messages that inspire. There's that word again, it's inspire. So a lot of people are looking to connect with they're looking for reasons to connect. They're looking for inspiration. They're looking for motivation. So you get to translate your vision and your purpose in business into messages online or offline that really inspire folks. You also, this is really important, you also get to attract more business because you're using content that comes from you. It's uniquely yours. It comes from your unique gifts. It makes you memorable. It makes you differentiate yourself in a certain way. You get to attract more business, and even if it doesn't turn into sales for you, it definitely could potentially turn into referrals and people who are coming into knowledge of you just by way of you talking about the work that you do through your personal branding strategy. And lastly, you get to make your work an authentic reflection of yourself with using limited resources. And I say limited resources because for the most part, social media is free unless you bump it up a little bit. But social media is free. So it means essentially that it's not free by time. Of course, time is money in most cases for most of us. So you have limited resources. However, social media for the most part and other forms of personal branding or other tools are unlimited. Like the sky is essentially the limit. You use a variety of different things. But should you have limited resources, because many entrepreneurs have limited resources, especially as we are starting out and starting up, you can allow your work to be super reflective of your authenticity by using just really, really basic resources such as Facebook and Twitter, and we'll talk about that too. All right, so for the most part, we see how organizational leadership leads to workplace success and marketplace performance. But that overall performance really gives you opportunity to be heard and sell as an industry expert. And that's what personal branding for the most part is about, whether it's your expertise for the work that you do outside of your full-time job or what you do day to day in your full-time job or what you do as an entrepreneur, you get to be the go-to source for any ideas, any ideas and any information about your area of expertise. You want people to keep you top of mind. That's essentially what you want to do. Personal branding, I want you guys to remember this one. Personal branding, for the most part, is a leadership requirement. It is not a campaign. When I saw this quote from Glenn Lopez, I thought it was great. So I of course, credit him in this presentation. Definitely don't think of personal branding as a self-promotion campaign. You want to think of this as a leadership requirement. As you take on, as you gain confidence and as you take on opportunities to position yourself and position your expertise, personal branding is going to become a leadership requirement for you. So it's not something that you want to overlook. There's another really great quote here that says, every day you must know, or every day you must deliver a standard of expectation that you have set forth for both yourself and for those you serve. So essentially, people are looking for you, and people are hoping that you will emerge and produce the high quality work and produce those levels of inspiration that they're seeking. And I guarantee you that as you create those things, you'll also be able to, and take on personal branding, you'll also find a variety of different types of inspiration for yourself, and you'll find these new ideas and things that you can do. So let's take a look at, really quickly, what this means for an organization in personal branding. The organization gets to use an individual's personal brand equity. All the resources, information, knowledge, connections, relationships that I have, they're mine, but as a result of me being an employee of your organization, I bring that equity to the table. In addition to the fact that as an individual, I get to use my role within the organization to increase my own personal visibility. So adding those things together is a win-win, and that's the way we should look at personal branding. Let's take a look at some big brands, and I hope you guys are tweeting hashtag UL Success. Let's take a look at some big brands. Anybody, if you're familiar with cars, you may know the car that's here on the left. This is a Porsche. What do you think about when you think of a Porsche? Expensive, fast, luxury, etc., all those kinds of things. The car on the right is a Kia. And sometimes when I share this, people don't always know what the car is. They say Honda, they say Ford, they say a variety of different things. But it's a Kia. It's actually a Kia hybrid. So what do we think of? We think of a Kia: economical, small, fast, can get you to A to B, etc., inexpensive. But essentially, these two cars do the same thing. They get you from A to B. The choice essentially here is what you value in one of these cars. But for the most part, they do the same thing. Let's take a look at a couple other big brands. So the sandwich on the left, really basic. We can make the assumption that that's a Subway sandwich. I often tease that I took a picture of a sandwich that I made in my house, because that's what it could be without the logo on it, right? But we've seen Subway sandwiches so much. We've seen the commercials, we've seen advertisements, etc. So we pretty much know what a Subway sandwich essentially would look like, what it's supposed to look like, right? So we think of Subway, we think of what? Eat fresh. We think of economical, we think we can we think of customization, we think of a variety of different things. We think of a safe brand. We may think of some crisis things every once in a while. But for the most part, Subway is a pretty trusted brand. The sub sandwich on the left is a little different, and I included the logo on that one for a reason. The sandwich here on the right is from Quiznos. I'm sure we're familiar with that brand. What do we think of when we think of the Quiznos brand or Quiznos sandwich? We think of a toasty hot sandwich, probably a variety of different little gourmet options, a little different than what you could get at Subway, probably a little bit more pricier than a Subway sandwich, and maybe not at in every shopping center or on every main street or neighborhood like a Subway could be found. So essentially, Subway, clean, eat fresh, variety of different options, economical, healthy, etc. Whereas Quiznos, a little bit more expensive, pricey, toasted, not as easy to find, probably a little bit gourmet, but essentially both brands and both brands give us a sub sandwich. Lastly, shoes on the left. The shoes on the left, I'm sure everybody knows, are Crocs. How do you know? We've seen them before. They're rubbery. They often will have holes in them. They'll often come in different colors, but they'll typically the majority of the ones you'll see will be kind of the color that's shown here, really plain color. And they're typically worn by for most of what we would assume. They're typically worn by folks who you probably see them at a doctor's office or at a hospital. So we kind of know a Croc, it doesn't really cost that much. It wouldn't cost that much in comparison to, say, a more high-end shoe. And I've never worn Crocs before, but I hear that they're comfortable. Some people say that they're not that comfortable, but most people say that they're very functional. Well, the shoe on the right is completely opposite. We've seen these shoes, and they've become really, really popular by way of the entertainment industry, and we've seen them on a very regular basis. Of course, with the signature red bottom and the price, of course, we know that these kinds of shoes, the Christian Louboutins, they're very expensive. They're not all that comfortable for most women. They usually come with a very high heel, 3-4 inches and above. They're very exclusive. So if we compare that to the Croc, they're completely different, but essentially they are both shoes. So let's take a look at, oh, I see we got questions. Neat. Questions, okay, cool. Let's take a look. We just looked at a couple of big brands. Let's look at some brands that I value. So essentially for me, I'll give you an example here of personal brands and corporate brands. All right, Toyota is one of the brands that I value. I do not drive a Toyota anymore, but Toyota was my first car in high school. It was the second car I had in college, and I bought my own Toyota, a third one, after I graduated from college. So that brand was very trusted for me, and it's one that I still value to this day. I value the Apple brand. I have a iPhone, an iPad, a Mac computer, MacBook. Apple has always been a brand that I appreciate, and I'm sure some of you appreciate that brand as well. They're forward thinking, they're creative, etc. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't like Samsung products or any other type of computer. I actually do have a Samsung Galaxy in addition to my iPhone. I value that brand as well, but I do appreciate the different aspects of Apple. So that's a brand that I feel that I would put at the top of the list for me. Kroger, for those of you who live in an area or grew up in an area where there was a Kroger grocery store, you know why we value, or why I value Kroger. I appreciate Publix. I appreciate Aldi's. I love Aldi. I appreciate Trader Joe's, but for different reasons. If I had to pick a store that I value the most amongst Publix and Aldi and Trader Joe's, I would definitely pick Kroger for a variety of different reasons. Now, I'm a Target shopper. I'm a Target girl. I appreciate Walmart. I have a very, very important appreciation for Walmart after doing work with the organization. But as I choose to shop for certain things, I put Target at the top of the list. There's a great, interesting experience that I have at Target. You always kind of go in Target with a few things on your list, and then you come out with a basket full of things. So they create that great shopping experience for you. And then lastly, Southwest Airlines is at the top of my list as well as a brand that I value. Just recently flew to Puerto Rico on Delta and had a great experience. But I spend more of my money and more of my time with Southwest. So if I were to rank who I love and appreciate more as an airline, I would definitely say Southwest. All right, let's look at a couple of personal brands. Okay, I'm sure everybody knows the guy on the left. That's Dr. Oz. We watch the show, or at least I do. I definitely appreciate the content that he shares on his show. It's well produced. It's very clear that he cares about the content that he produces on his show. It's really clear that he cares about his viewers and his fans. And I just think he's very, very, very authentic. and I think he's very transparent. I don't know if you all remember, there was a little bit of a crisis situation with him recently in the past year or so, and he was very transparent about what happened with his crisis situation. He's continued to do good work even after that. At the bottom right here, I'm sure you all recognize that face too. That's Tyra Banks. She's awesome. If you remember her story, of course, she started out as a supermodel, but she's evolved into so many different things as a television producer and movies and writing books and all these kinds of different things that she does. So she took that great opportunity to leverage her prominence as a supermodel to advance her career into all these different things. I think that she's done very well with that. And then I'm going to circle back up on top of Tyra's picture to Leland Statham. If you're not from Nashville, you don't know Leland Statham. Well, maybe you might if you're in journalism. But Leland Statham is the meteorologist for News Channel 5 here in Nashville. And why would I value his personal brand so much to put him on this presentation? Well, I remember when I decided to make Nashville home after college, I would get up in the morning. I'd never done this in college, but I would get up in the morning and check the weather because I was going out to the office or going to work or meet a client for the day. And I would often check the weather. And it just so happens that I found myself regularly saying, as I got the remote to turn on the TV, let me see what Leland's talking about today. Let me turn on Leland. Let me see what Leland is saying. I wasn't saying to myself, let me check the weather. Let me see if it's raining, or is it snowing, or is it too hot or too cold. I immediately would say, what's Leland talking about today? Because the way in which he was able to relate, the way in which he positions himself, the way in which he provides his weather report, not that different than anyone else, but for some reason he was warm. He was a little warmer than the folks on the other station. He was very clear in his approach, and I began to value the way in which he delivered the weather and reported the weather. So I found myself saying, let's see what Leland's saying today. And that, to me, is very telling of the power for a personal brand. Now, let's move on a little quickly. The brands you value. I want you to think about the brands that you value. It can be any of the corporate brands that I mentioned or a corporate brand that you value. It can be a personal brand that you value. I want you to think about what that brand is. It can be a school or a product. It can be a celebrity. It can be an artist. It can be anyone or anything that you value. It can be a TJ Maxx or whoever. Think about what that brand is, and think about the attributes that that brand has, their personality, their position, their story, etc., all the things that they mean to you and why you value them. Let's go back to the definition of brand. Think about that brand or the interactions that you have with that brand, the experiences you have with that brand, and the expectations that you have of that brand. And determine if that brand actually is aligned with who you are. That would be helpful. And as you think about what that brand is, you're going to come up with a couple of keywords and words that kind of center around who you are and what you do. And you probably found that as you describe a brand that you appreciate, like Nike, Nike is bold and unapologetic and trustworthy and responsible. Like if you were to come up with those kinds of words, Nike is athletic, and maybe you are a fitness guru or a fitness fan, or you care about your health, etc. You think about what words are you repeating over and over again about that brand that match with who you are as an individual. And what I've done, I've created 5 keywords for myself. And those keywords for me essentially show the things, as I said earlier, that are aligned with my brand. I picked the words culture, communication, diversity, change, and community. So I'd like to challenge you to create 3 to 5 keywords that are aligned with who you are and describe the things that you're good at, describe the things that people immediately think about when they think about you. They describe the things that you promise to deliver every time, or you promise to impact every time people come in contact with you. Only 3 to 5 words. Once you get past 5, it gets kind of messy. But if you can think of those 3 to 5 words, that would be helpful. What I do is I have put verbs in front of those keywords to talk specifically about what I do and why it matters. Those questions that we talked about earlier. For me, for my personal brand, my statement is that I transform culture, I enhance communication, I improve diversity, I navigate change, and I've helped build community. And these are the things that I would essentially say that I help organizations do, or I help my clients do. Or anytime that I'm at the table or I'm in the room, these are the things that you can count on me to do. So the best way to be able to communicate that, though, is through social media. I mean, internet. That's the best way to do it at this point. And I think that as you strengthen who you are, and as you come up with those 5 keywords, and you're able to say, I help, or I facilitate, or I create opportunities to blank, 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 right? As you come up with that personal brand statement and look at those keywords and align them with yourself, you now need to communicate that and translate that onto social media platforms. I think there's a poll question asking, how often are you creating social media content? And what tools are you using most likely? For long form content, it's really, really great to be able to use the resources or the platforms that allow you to have that long form content, like Facebook, Google+. And don't sleep on Google+. It has a great prominence when you search your name, when you Google yourself, and you have content out there on Google+ that you've shared. That will definitely add you high up into the search rankings. Of course, we're familiar now with Snapchat. Some people are using it, some people aren't, but that's a great way to talk to your audience. So is Periscope. I use Periscope more often when I'm at professional events, and more Snapchat if I'm doing something fun and personal. We all, of course, know Twitter. Twitter is 140 characters. You know, it's quick, it's micro-blogging. You can share, you can talk back, you can engage, etc. And then, of course, LinkedIn is, I definitely would recommend that being the place to start. I met someone recently, they had forgotten their LinkedIn password and couldn't get in and hadn't put a picture up. That's a no-no nowadays. If you're not there, it's almost as if you don't exist in business. So that's the place where you connect and grow and build relationships. And you may share content there as well, but that's where you build that professional presence for your personal brand. And then I think all the other elements are supplemental, and they help enhance the content that you might be sharing. All right, let's look at some other forms or some platforms. I don't know if you all have heard of Storify. But when I'll use some video platforms like Instagram and photos, Instagram or Periscope, etc., to share where I am at a conference or things of that nature. And then when I finish, I'll go back and look for the hashtags for that conference and kind of share a little story, right? Instead of writing a blog post, I just get the collection of the tweets and the photos and make a story out of it. And that's my Storify story. And then I share that Storify on the rest of my platforms and integrate that content onto LinkedIn and Facebook, etc. I also blog. I think that the poll was showing that not a lot of people are blogging right now, but I highly recommend, even if you just write once a week, once a month. If you were blogging once a month, meaning if I write 350 words a month on a topic that I'm an expert in, you can get your phone and take notes in your phone about a specific topic. And by the end of the month, you'll have a blog post. That is going to be very, very helpful to, again, prove and show your expertise and your authority on a topic. Pinterest also helps for those of you who may have a visual, a very creative and visual type talent. Pinterest, or you may have products to sell, etc. Pinterest is very, very good for that. And then also Kickstarter. If you have a nonprofit effort and you're raising money for that effort, and you have a startup concept and you need help to get that going, get it off the ground, websites like Kickstarter are very, very good for that. So essentially, when you're branding yourself personally, your content is your voice. Now that you've kind of figured out what those keywords are, and as you think about what those keywords are, those descriptors are, and why that personal brand is so critical, what you share and what you say is your voice. And that voice is what is translated into your brand. One of the things I discovered is that the more I shared, the more people listened. So I think in the poll, a couple of you mentioned, a high number of you mentioned that you don't think you have anything to say. You'd be surprised at how many, if you just said the things that reflect your expertise, you'd be surprised at how many likes and retweets and comments and messages that you get if you just choose to share. And that's one of the things I realized. The more I share, the more people listen to me. And that those people listening to me ultimately translated into clients and dollars for me, ROI, but it also translated into people seeking and trying to find more information about me and what I do. So lastly, we'll end with a couple of don'ts. The first set of don'ts, or the first don't for your personal brand, don't pimp out folks. If you have relationships with folks, use them wisely. If you have partners or friends or people in your network, etc., don't misuse them. It's one thing to network and build relationships, but it's another thing to misuse them unfairly and take advantage of them, or use your accomplishments to try to, in a very covert and unfair way, to try to use them to your advantage in ways that would be reflect negatively, upon your integrity and upon your character. You also don't want to post overly personal content online. Now, this is debatable. Some people are okay with posting overly personal content. I am not. I share certain things personally, certain things I do not share, because essentially I know that there are a lot of people watching, and they may not know how to translate or have a certain level of maturity to decide what they think of me. So there's certain things that I choose to share, certain things I do not share, certain locations I will not share just for safety reasons until I leave. So I'm a user of Foursquare. Foursquare is a location-based marketing tool, and I use it because of the perks and the little bells and whistles that it has. But sometimes I will not share my location until I've left the place, and that's just simply for safety. You don't want to push content and walk away. I say this a lot. When you create content, you don't want to create content, send that blog post, send that LinkedIn update, post that Instagram video or that Instagram picture, and go away. You want to engage. You want to determine what people are saying and respond to them. That's that two-way communication that we talked about earlier. Also, you don't want to forget your writing style. Shouldn't have to say this, but it's critical. Any text language on social media, no, it's completely no. Don't do it. You can be short, you can use abbreviations and things of that nature, but again, you may have your future employer looking at you and following you. You may have that future client looking at you as well. So that writing style is going to be critical. Thankfully, most social media platforms, they have a editing function. So you can go back and edit if you made a typo. I'm notorious for making sure that I don't have any typos. That's critical as well. Now, don't take on too much. I know you're excited as a result of this conversation, but don't take on too much unless you have a strategy. Do not overcommit on branding. You want to be out there as much as you can because of all the things that you have to share and the goals that you have for yourself. But if you cannot produce on a regular basis, you're not going to be consistent. So just start with a few things here and there, get a rhythm together, get a schedule together. I post a blog once a month. I send out an email blast once a month. I tweet every day, or I post something to LinkedIn once a week. commit to things that you know you can do. Also, don't lose sight while you're sight of the reason why you're talking in the first place. With the responses that you get, if you get some, great. If you don't get any, that's fine too. You know why? Because you're branding yourself for you and future opportunities. So it's going to take time for you to see the fruits of your labor, but it means that even if nobody responds, you still have this obligation, as we said earlier with that quote, you still have this obligation to show yourself as a leader and an expert in your field. So it's okay if you don't get the responses you think you should get, or you don't get the clients you think you should get right away. It's okay if, you know, one of your blog posts doesn't lead to a job offer. Just don't lose sight while you're talking in the first place. All right, couple of do's for the personal brand. Keep your stories relevant and engaging. This goes back to, you know, posting just random things just for the sake of posting. Try to make sure that whatever you share is relevant, it makes sense, it's something people will appreciate and will share even. Yeah, you want them to see it, but you really want them to share too. So try to keep your story relevant and engaging. I'll give you an example. When Steve Harvey had the fumble at the, I think, what was it, the Miss Universe pageant, um, I typically will post things related to current events. And I saw a lot of my friends on Facebook and other places, Instagram, joking about his mistake. And for me, as a PR practitioner, I started to think about all the reasons why that happened and how it could be capitalized upon. And so I went onto social media and posted like the 3 reasons why this fumble is going to be great for Steve Harvey as he announced the wrong winner. And lo and behold, shortly after, not only did I post this, I went to Periscope and did like a little video chat, and I did an update on LinkedIn as well. Well, shortly after that, it was announced that he would be back next year as the host of the pageant. And then he's got this new TV show, I can't think of the name of it, interviewing little kids, which is actually a prettier show. So keep your content really engaging and relevant so you can have some conversation out of it. Lastly, or not lastly, next, develop meaningful relationships on multiple levels. When you connect with people online and you see that you have some things in common, or you see that they're working in a space that you want to work in, or they're working on a project and you need some help or advice on that, invite them to coffee. Like, take those relationships off the internet into real life, because that is where you begin to increase the meaning in the relationship, and you can connect with people on multiple levels. And ultimately, they will co-sign for you. They will advocate for you. They will be your ally, because now you've built that relationship and you've connected with them online, and their co-sign, them being an ally, adds to your credibility and enhances your personal brand. You want to maintain visionary status. So it means that whatever that vision is, don't lose sight of it. It means that rants and, you know, certain things that are really that kind of take you off your kilter, things that are really off your talking point, try not to include those things in the things that you say online. Also, you may get invited to be on a committee or serve within an organization or volunteer for something, and if that's not in your line, the line of what you've drawn for your personal brand, then you can kind of consider what are the pros and cons of that. So try to maintain what vision you have for yourself, and you can decide what you share, what not to share, where you place your time, and where not to give your time. Also, stay current and engage on social media platforms. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. You want to see what's out there and determine how it can benefit you, and what the features are for your personal brand. You also want to allow your strategy time and room to grow. I kind of touched on this earlier. Allow yourself a chance to build and get those numbers up and followers. It doesn't matter if you truly do, as long as you have a presence, is what really matters. But don't think you're going to get, you know, an extra 2,000 followers overnight. That does happen for some people, but it doesn't happen for the majority of us. So don't be hard on yourself when you start out.
Which is
Uh-oh.
so true. And Ariel, I just want to get to the Q&A. We don't have a lot of time, and I want to get a
Sure.
lot of these questions in. You guys can reach out to Ariel and myself both on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. We are everywhere. She is everywhere. And your information today was fabulous, which is why I wanted you to continue on. The questions I'm going to kind of compile. There's always a lot that are similar yet different from different sides. So a lot of folks seem to be working in places where they feel that they don't have the freedom to truly work on their personal brand. Any suggestions? I think that you are your brand, you are where you work, it shouldn't be taking up extra time, but any suggestions where sometimes you do work in an environment that's a little bit less flexible, like a financial firm or a law firm, and sometimes you just have bosses that are not into it. Any suggestions for
Sure.
these folks?
Yes. It means that you need to find the extra time after work or on the weekend to create your own content. And it means that even if you don't leverage your expertise in the work that you do 9 to 5, you may have another level of expertise, and you can create a place where you can talk about those things that you're passionate about that don't have anything to do with their 9 to 5. So it could mean that you have just a regular Facebook page, or that is just a fan page that people can follow, or it may mean that you have a blog post that allows you to talk about the work that you do in the community, or something completely, a blog site rather, that's completely different than the work that you do 9 to 5, but it is going to take a commitment. Maybe you volunteer, and maybe if you work for a financial institution and you're allowed to volunteer, maybe some of the things that you share about your volunteer work versus your 9 to 5, the work that you do 9 to 5.
Yes, and I just want to assure everyone online that today's presentation is being recorded and will be made available, and all of our past Digital Career Success series are also available through our website, nul.org. There is a tab for Urban League Jobs Network, and also we have an Urban Leagues Job Network YouTube channel where most of these have been recorded, and if they're not there, there are links available. So you will not miss out anyone who came into today's presentation late, but remember, that's why being on time is important. In terms of just making sure that some people feel that their brand might have taken some hits, or kind of like what you were talking about with Steve Harvey and some other folks, what are some of the best ways to kind of turn your brand around, brand improvement, or maybe in the case of career that you're going from, finance into marketing, and you want to show how you've kind of changed, but you're still that great, wholesome person that you were. What are some suggestions? What, they wanted to know, do you have to do this across all platforms? Are you better off focusing on one and really targeting it? What are some of your suggestions?
I think that to turn the brand perception around, because that's essentially what we're talking about. I think listening to the question is perception. And I think that the way we turn that around is without even creating your own content. There's content already out there. So I think that there should be a way for individuals who are looking to reinvent or kind of change their voice, if you will.
Correct.
Look for those articles, look for those people who are already talking about those things, and follow them, engage with them. And as you find those articles and those posts, different blog posts or different events or different things that you've seen on social media, it means to now start sharing that with the people who are following you. So, she's trying to change her voice. Typically, she worked in this particular industry and had these kinds of things, or may have gone through some difficulties, etc. And now she's talking about marketing. That's interesting. So I think that use the content that's already out there. I would start with LinkedIn, since that's professional, the professional network, and start to share content there. And as you start to get a comfort level of sharing the content, you can then begin to make your own content. And as you start to make your own content, then you can stretch out to more platforms and aggregate that content. For instance, I use Hootsuite to aggregate my content, which means when I decide to post something, which I post something daily and sometimes 2 or 3 times daily, I schedule that content. And it all goes to Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn at the same time. So I would definitely recommend starting with LinkedIn, creating, sharing content there that talks about your area of expertise. It doesn't mean that it's your content, but you want to share interesting things so that people would think of you as someone who has an interest or who has an expertise in the area. And as you share more and more, then you can stretch out to different platforms.
Gotcha. These two kind of I'm combining in terms of there are definitely some folks in our audience who are interested in blogging and want to know what are the best ways to actually develop a blog. You know, can you do it through LinkedIn? Can you do it through one specific platform? Should you use your website? And then, you know, can you also repeat how to use the hashtags from conferences and integrate them for a Storify?
Sure. So a couple things, I'll give you my strategy, and this works for me because sometimes I'm all over the place. But I do enjoy writing. That's my discipline. So it's easier for me because I enjoy it, but it can be very difficult for me because I'm so busy. So my strategy is I write a blog post once a month. Doesn't mean that well, let me say that again. I post a blog post once a month. It does not mean that I'm writing once a month. I take notes in my phone of things that I'm interested in. I save articles that I see. I go back to those articles. I combine my content. I just, you know, try to find that particular strategy. I've advised some people to, some clients and friends to create a little editorial calendar. So just go through each month and decide what I want to write about each month, and that may change as things come up in current events and you know, change your mind about what you want to say that month. But I think as far as platforms, you can definitely start out with WordPress. It's really easy. It has a lot of plugins. It has the themes already there. You can start out with WordPress. There are others that are really easy to use. But I think that as long as you know where your voice is, going back to those keywords that I recommended, those 3 to 5 keywords, if what you are writing does not fit into those 3 things, don't write it, because it's going to throw off the perception of what people think of you, and you're going to feel a little bit out of your comfort zone. And if you find that you want to write about something that is not in those 3 to 5 keywords, then you should probably think about changing your 3 to 5 keywords. But I think starting out with a site like WordPress is great. Some people back years ago, I was about to say back in the day, started out with Facebook, but I recommend starting out with a blog site that you can name your own, put your content there, and repost your content to LinkedIn. Now, some people don't have a blog site and they just use their LinkedIn to post their blog posts. That is totally fine. What I do is I post to WordPress, I share that on LinkedIn, and when I go to conferences, I will go to my Storify, allow it to plug in all of my social media sites, search for that hashtag or search for that event, and then what it'll allow you to do in Storify is to drag the tweets, the pictures, the posts, etc., that you want to feature in your story, and save that as a story. And then I take that Storify link and then share that to my blog and to my LinkedIn, my Facebook, etc. So it's really best to start with one platform, like as your main platform, and then share that content in other places where you have a presence.
Fabulous. Well, I cannot thank you enough for joining us today, and especially our audience for holding on to every word. There are definitely some questions that were not fully answered, but most of them are. Please feel free to ask Ariel, reach out and ask either Ariel or myself for some answers. I was the one answering all those questions first and saying I'd ask Ariel when we got to this part. So if you have questions, find us on LinkedIn, tell us that you met us here, or you can Facebook or Instagram, wherever is comfortable for you, wherever you are. I clearly want to thank you, Ariel, for joining us today. It was definitely noteworthy. You made me think about my own 5 words that I need to create my keywords for my own brand as I grow. I think that was definitely helpful for everyone, and I want to invite everyone, including yourself, to our next part of our series, which is Influencing Your Industry, with Chef Max Hardy. He is a celebrity chef to many folks that you see playing basketball, sports, celebrities across the board, but he has a really interesting story as to how he leveraged his brand in the culinary industry to kind of cut across that as well as sports and how you can do that with your own brands. Many of you today talk about having more than one hat or being in more than one industry, doing multiple things that don't always seem like they connect. But if you're able to do what Ariel taught us today and really truly build your brand to the point where you can leverage it and become an influencer in your industry is the goal. You become more important. You become someone that everyone turns to, you know, as you grow your brand. So we will learn from him how he was able to leverage that not just for himself but for others, and that's really the key here, is how can you really help yourself where it also impacts others. I hope you join us on, say, May 18th for influencing your industry and how to connect with those important people that influence you, your industry, and then how do you do that for others. So join us once again, and Ariel, thank you for joining us today. Please find us on the Urban League Jobs Network. If you haven't uploaded your resume, please do so. We have lots of employers looking for you, and start thinking about joining us in Baltimore this August for the National Urban League Conference. Our career fair is open to anyone and everyone. It is free. But come prepared, and that's why we're doing this, and there'll be lots of workshops there live. So we look forward to seeing you on the 18th. Thank you for joining us once again, and look for the link if you've missed any of this or want to do a recap on your own. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.